We're just going to wait a minute or two to let more folks roll in before we jump into the National Beaver Working Group's open house. Please feel free to chat and say hello and where you're coming in from. Also, we will have the Q&A open throughout. After each presentation, not after each presentation, after all the presentations, we'll be able to answer those questions and get a conversation going. But as I said, we're just going to wait another minute or two to let folks come in. Thank you all for noting that the chat was disabled. It should be abled now, and that everyone can chat. Great. We are going to get started. Thank you all for being present today on this Monday for the National Beaver Working Group's open house. I'm just going to get us started and give us some context and share a little bit about Beaver Institute, whether we're new to you or not. I just want to give a sort of a high-level overview of what we're up to and how these working groups came about. So Beaver Institute is a national nonprofit providing tools and skills for climate-resilient communities to coexist alongside beavers in the bountiful ecological and economic services they provide. Our keystone program is Beaver Corps, where we train folks to become beaver wetland professionals, mitigating human-beaver conflicts in their community and restoring the landscape. Creating more resiliency for all living things. We are taking applicants and we offer scholarships. So check that out. Born out of BeaverCon, which was held last year in June 2022, it was our second BeaverCon, held outside of Baltimore, Maryland. We launched 6 national beaver working groups. These officially launched in the fall. And these were in the areas of policy and legal, science and research, beaver management practices, education, communication, and funding. The idea of this was that knowledge sharing and inspiration and activation and discussion wouldn't just be a flash in the pot once a year at a conference, but that would be an ongoing community where we could activate ideas and move things forward for beavers. So we are now 10 months into this. And each group is going to share with you what they've done, what they've accomplished, what activities have occurred, and what they might need and what they're looking for. Each of these groups will share those updates, and then we'll open it up for discussion and Q&As. But first, before we officially launch everything, I want to hand the mic over to Dr. Bonnie Gulas-Wroblewski, who has been critical in facilitating these groups, ensuring not just the professionability, but that communication and inspiration stays peaked and that everyone knows what's going on. We really could not have done this without her. So Bonnie, I'd just like to hand this over to you for a moment.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Adam, and thank you everybody who's attending today. We're really excited to be sharing the work that we've been doing over the past 10 months with you. We've been working both individually as the 6 working groups that Adam described to you, as well as collectively. So we have several overarching projects that we're developing that really touch on all the themes of each of the working groups. And we're really excited to have you join us in the future. So please don't be shy. And if you're interested in joining any of these groups in any way, shape, or form, please contact me or Adam and we can get you hooked up. And thanks again for coming today. And we're really looking forward to chatting with you after everybody's presentation.
Thank you, Bonnie. And just know that the chat should be enabled now. I think I finally got that figured out. So feel free to say who you are, where you're coming from. And I would like to go ahead and officially launch this by having Rob Walton, the co-chair of Policy and Legal Working Group. His co-chair, Alexa Whipple from Meth Out Beaver Project, is out in the field doing important work with beavers. So she can't be with us today, but she is with Spirit. And Rob, to you.
Thank you very much, Adam. And hello to everybody from Portland, Oregon. I'd like to start by acknowledging and thanking you, Adam, and Mike and Bonnie and the others with the Beaver Institute and the co-chair, Alexa. Thank you all again for the work you've done that makes this all possible. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. I'd also like to start by showing off my uniform. If you can see it, I don't know. Here it is, my Beaver Believer shirt. As an acknowledgement and thanks to Sarah Koenigsberg for her amazing movie, Beaver Believers. I saved this uniform for special occasions. So the Beaver Institute website has a great overview of the working groups, including this one, the Policy Legal Working Group. So you can all see more information about the vision and mission and projects of the working groups there. The basic overview of the Policy Legal Group is that we're working to clarify and improve existing beaver-related statutes, regulations, and policies at the federal and state levels. We are creating resources that clarify rules, policies, and identify partners. We're building inter and intra-state networks and alliances. We're exploring how to streamline the permitting of beaver coexistence projects. So at least a dozen states are represented by people who attend this working group so far. And I think it's fair to say that all of us share the same frustration that was described by Dr. Michael Pollack, who wrote this passage in the Beaver Restoration Guidebook. This is my favorite passage, and I know some of you have heard this before, maybe several times. So what he wrote in the Beaver Restoration Guidebook is that the authors originally intended to include a chapter on beaver rules and regulations as they pertain to restoration, but the process of researching this subject revealed a confusing patchwork of state, federal, tribal, and even local rules governing beaver and beaver dams that varies by land ownership, state and federal agencies, and other factors. Untangling the web of rules and policies into a tractable discussion was beyond the scope of this initial document, but we hope to pursue this topic in the future and appreciate any relevant and information that readers can provide. So we're working to respond to that, and we're working to try to untangle and clarify and fix that web. I'd like to put in a plug for the Beaver Restoration Guidebook, which is a great resource that can be found on the website of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Oregon office, but it's due for updates. So if you have questions or suggestions, you can contact Brian Bangs at that office, or you can find the website by searching for the Beaver Restoration Guidebook or going to fws.gov/media/Beaver Restoration Guidebook. So we face daunting challenges, and we've got lots of questions. One of our goals is developing a workable strategy to get multiple agencies to clarify and streamline the permitting of beaver coexistence devices. I propose we set up a meeting between the Policy Legal Group, the Science and Research Group, and the Beaver Management Practices Working Groups to discuss these and other issues. For the Science Group, is further discussion and research needed about fish passage, water temperature, flood risk, and other issues associated with beaver dams and coexistence devices? If so, who could do that, and what would it take to initiate that work? And for the practitioners group, are there questions and problems that members have relating to obtaining permits for the installation of beaver coexistence devices? Now, Adam, maybe we can set up a meeting like this at people's mutual convenience. So I welcome your feedback and invite you all to email or call me. And I apologize, I'm going to have to leave this meeting soon to make an appointment. But Adam, that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. And as Rob noted, if you're interested in joining the Policy and Legal Working Group, they meet monthly, and reach out to me, Adam at beaverinstitute.org, if you'd like to join this or any other group or have any ideas or want to contribute. So next, I believe we're going to be doing an alphabetical order. So here we'll move on to communications. which is the group that I facilitate and chair. Just to put a plug out there, I am looking for a co-chair. So if you have any skills or interest in communication, and I mean that broadly, from journalism to social media to film, performance, singing, dancing, anything that communicates, we're looking for a really creative space here to do new projects and research that really brings in innovation and reaches a large public about beavers. So I'm going to share my screen 1 second as I get this all set up.
Adam, I have a question while you're doing that. Is this going to be recorded?
It is. It's being recorded right now. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And let's see here. Please excuse the technical difficulty. I have too many screens open, as is seems to be. All right, here we go. All right. So the National Beaver Working Group Communications Group, one of the first things we did was we had a media training, and we did this with Dr. Emily Fairfax. This is on our YouTube. You can see this. This was a really wonderful way to set up the working group and sort of provide some context about when you talk to the media, how to position yourself, how to communicate clearly, how to build bridges. And beyond that, not just talking to media, but how to talk to people who may have resistance or don't know much about beavers. This really set up the working group as a sort of platform for folks to try things out. The following month, we met and sort of tried different scenarios and different strategies of speaking to media and to folks that aren't beaver believers yet. After this, we did a collaboration between Occidental Arts and Ecology, Water Institute, Wyoming Untrapped, and Defenders of Wildlife, along with, I believe there was one other organization. One moment, I'm gonna have to look at my notes here, so please excuse me. Yes, the Defenders of Wildlife and the Beaver Institute. We created messaging on Beaver Facts with shared hashtags as a means to create a united front. In June, we hosted a webinar presented by Dr. Bonnie Gulas-Roblewski, who's been really active in the communications working group. This was using conservation psychology to promote tolerance of beavers, which covered human-beaver conflict mitigation by employing psychological theory and social marketing tools. Out of the communication working group, myself and Bonnie have launched public programming hosted by Beaver Institute with Beavers Uncovered, a monthly webinar series on underexplored beaver themes. Our first presentation was Beavers on the Edge, where we hosted folks working with beaver restoration on the borders of Mexico and Arizona, as well as folks working with beavers in the Arctic. This month, we will explore urban beavers coming up. This will be on July 25th. And onward, we'll feature disparate themes on beaver topics and be on our eBlast, Beaver Institute's eBlast, to get more information there. As I said, I'm currently looking for a co-chair and for folks that are eager to engage in the creative space of communication. Unlike other workshops that meet monthly, the communications working group meets on an ad hoc basis, so it's project to project. So we're looking for new projects to ignite for the fall. So we have some ideas cultivated, but are looking for greater participation with new folks to bring energy into it. So again, reach out to me, and if you're interested in the communications working group, we will be in touch. That's my presentation. I think I would like to go ahead and hand it over to would be education now.
Thanks, Adam. I'm Allison Zach. I am with the Human Beaver Coexistence Fund, and I'm in Virginia. And I'm co-chair of the Education Working Group, along with Sally Albright, who I will pass it over to in just a minute. First of all, I'll just explain kind of our overall purpose. It's to improve the quality of beaver education programs and the accessibility of educational resources for educators and students of all age groups across the country. And our kind of concept of beaver education is pretty broad. It's meant to be inclusive of all different kinds of science and other disciplines that in some way relate to beavers. So that encompasses watershed science, ecology, climate change education, and even subject matter beyond the STEM fields, so including arts and social science, storytelling. And so our definition of Beaver education is pretty intentionally broad to allow for those different opportunities. Our audience includes also kind of a variety of folks, classroom teachers, informal educators, the general public, and then some other like wildlife rehabilitation professionals and decision makers, science communicators. So again, very broad there, and we are always looking for new members to join our group. We meet the first Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern time. But Sally and I, both as co-chairs, are on the East Coast, and so we are looking for folks from around the country that are interested in contributing to our different education projects. We have recently restructured a little bit just to we were grappling with for the first few months of how to address kind of youth education needs and then adult outreach, all of which we value. And so we have split it up now so that I will be more focused on the youth education projects that we're working on, and Sally is taking over the adult outreach side of things. And so our meetings will consist of a little bit of time together, but then breaking out so that we can focus on different projects based on the age groups that we're focused on. And what we have been working on with youth education since we formed is basically compiling a massive database of existing Beaver education resources in all of the categories. And we are working on kind of reviewing and approving those resources on the basis of the group values that are important to all of us. So recognizing that the resources include, of course, both accurate information, but also promote tolerance and coexistence. And then we'll be working on identifying gaps in those resources and then figuring out a plan to move forward on how to fill those gaps. And then another youth education project that's in very early stages right now is working with Scout groups on Beaver education, particularly badges that relate to beavers and related activities. So we have a couple of volunteer interns working on that. And that pretty much sums up the youth education side of things. I'll pass it along to Sally to talk about what we're working on with adult outreach.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison. So as Allison mentioned, I'm co-chairing on the adult education side of our Beaver education working group. And my background, again, my name is Sally Albright, and my background is working with Anne Arundel County's Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration in the Public Works Department in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. And so as the outreach coordinator, a lot of what I do is direct outreach with residents, contractors, and other folks who are living near, around, or being impacted by beaver activity. And specifically from the public works side of things, we are often, if not us, then the Department of Natural Resources are often the first to get called when a resident has a quote unquote beaver problem. So given that we already have a lot of this beaver focused education really working in our bureau, we're definitely interested within the adult education side of the working group in developing an adaptable presentation and potentially a train the trainer program in partnership with folks like Beaver Corps and other associated working groups that can be presented to those municipal representatives so that when they're faced with something like a beaver dam that's clogging a culvert, they can be presented with a menu of options for coexistence measures that don't just automatically end in trapping. And that being said, as Allison mentioned, our audiences are very broad, and within the youth and adult ranges, we can drill into a couple of different stakeholders within each for sure. So as I mentioned, definitely municipal and state agencies we're working on outreach education to present to those folks. We're also interested in communicating directly with local trappers, which in the state of Maryland is nice and streamlined, where actually it's illegal to trap a beaver in our state without having a license through the Department of Natural Resources. So basically all of our licensed trappers are on a contact list through our state of Maryland website. So I'm hoping to eventually engage those folks and take our experiences in Maryland and make that adaptable on a broader scale. So let me see any other things. So yeah, the train the trainer aspect definitely will have a lot of different scope to it depending on who we're talking to. But essentially the goal is to find some level of education and messaging that is somewhere between the DIY tree caging efforts and the large scale, ecotone level coexistence installations that happen. Something that we can use to educate and empower some of our local agencies, local contractors, and of course our residents to address those problems without villainizing the beaver or feeling like they can't fight back. So anyway, that sort of sums up the adult education side of things. Of course, that will definitely grow and mature as our programming develops. But we're definitely excited to see what comes out of our local programming and of course how we can then adapt that and share that broadly. So yeah, thank you. I'll pass it on to who's next, Adam.
Yes, you will pass it over. Thank you for the presentation there, Sally and Allison. I'm going to hand this over to the funding working group, to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. And then I'm going to look for my PowerPoint. There we go. So I am the chair of the National Beaver Working Group on Funding. And yes, I would love a co-chair. So if anyone's interested and has some grant writing experience, please reach out. So this is the statement that is on the Beaver Institute's website about the National Beaver Working Group on Funding. Basically, we're here to create resources and capacity for individuals and groups to realize beaver-related restoration and coexistence projects. And I just think it's really important that we look at all of the beaver working groups as an opportunity to build our capacity, right? So why do we need a working group on funding? Well, obviously, we're here to share knowledge. Grant writing is a skill that you can teach and learn. We feel like if we put together a bank of successful applications with strong narrative and research to back it up, it'll help lift us all up when it comes to the effort to find funding for our project, whether it's a coexistence project or an education and outreach project or a restoration project. And grant writing capacity in particular is something that I think we could all use some expansion on. So since we started, we've had a couple of activities. We put together a resource that you can find on the Beaver Institute website called How to Apply for Funding for Beaver Advocacy. And it basically lays out all of the things that an organization needs to do before it starts doing grant writing. Like, are you a registered 501c3? Do you have a sam.gov account? Do you have audited financial statements for your last couple of fiscal years? And then it sort of works through what kind of beaver advocacy project you want to do and how to write your application narrative. So you can take a peek at the website to see what that looks like. There's also a link on the website where you can request help for funding your beaver advocacy project. So it's a Google form. We collect information about who you are, what your organization, and what kind of help you're looking for. Do you need help finding potential funders, like through a grant making database, or did you want help writing the narrative for your application, or have you written your application but you just would like someone to look it over and give you some pointers on how to sharpen it up? We've also been collecting successful applications for beaver advocacy. So we have a couple of different successful applications for different types of projects. We have been collecting information about a variety of federal and state grant programs, the USDA programs and whatnot. Hat tip to Brian Hummel for sharing a lot of his knowledge in this area. And I have a grant making database that we can use to research funders for your specific state or type of project. I also wanted to mention that we are going after a National Science Foundation Dynamics of Socio-Environmental Systems Research Coordination Grant. It's a DICES RCN grant. It's being written by Sarah Koenigsberg, and we of course are hoping to help her. And as it's being conceived now, I don't know what it's going to look like in its final form, but we're hoping to use it to fund this type of work so that the organizations and nonprofits that we work for can get funding to help defray the costs of our time. And I think it's going to be, obviously it'd be great to get funded, but it also would be just an amazing way for the whole Beaver advocacy community to see all of our efforts multiplied, because I think we just cannot work in silos anymore. Like, this is the next step where we start to work, in a coordinated fashion so that we're not all reinventing the wheel every day. And, here's my what's next page. So please join our working group, feel free to volunteer to be a co-chair, and also send us your successful grant applications, because we'll put them in our library and we'll use the knowledge from them to help someone else get a grant to do Beaver advocacy. So I'm going to stop my share, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to pass it over to Mike and Jacob, who are co-chairs of the Beaver Management Practices Working Group.
Thank you, Adam. I'll start off and see if I can share my screen also. Let's see. All right, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yes, we can. Thanks. Mike.
Okay, all right. So yeah, Jacob and I are co-chairing the Beaver Management Working Group, and want to give you some an overview. Why does this group exist? Well, as we know, there's a lot of energy behind beavers now. A lot of things are changing, and while we have the Beaver Restoration Guidebook that outlines and details the best management practices for beaver management, there's a lot of new things and old things that aren't in it, and people need to know whether or not these things different methods are going to be worth trying or not. So we want to serve as a resource for people in the field who are doing beaver management, as well as sharing knowledge to the general public, policymakers, etc. And there really is a need for an independent review of evolving technologies. So we want to share what works, what seems not to work, and help people not repeat mistakes or failures that other people have done. And in promising innovations, we want to really help to boost those and get more people involved, getting more data, and seeing how these new technologies are going to work. And so that's our goal. Our goal is really to continue to push and evolve the state of beaver management so that it can be as best as it can be. And so the way we're envisioning doing that is we want to essentially have a peer review, and our group will serve as that, of experts with various expertise regarding beavers, who can review what is out there and assess whether it seems like it's working. Is there data to support that? Is it a theory that is worth pursuing? And then share our recommendations with the public. And that's it's not like we're going to say, no, it's absolutely don't do this or absolutely do this, but we kind of like I'll date myself here, kind of a good housekeeping seal of approval type thing, where we say, okay, this has been reviewed by this working group and we find merit in it. So currently we have 29 members, and we're we're happy to have more people join us. As you can see, a wide variety of regions in the country, as well as some national organizations represented. And it's a wide range. Certainly an emphasis on people who are in the field doing this, but also people work for advocacy groups or nonprofits, government agencies, universities, basically anyone with expertise that can help us move this thing forward. And we've started off with our initial tasks of tree protection is believe it or not, probably the most common request for help with beavers. And Jacob Shockey with Project Beaver, we're helping to develop a one-page information sheet that will also refer people for further information. So any landowner or anyone wanting to protect trees from beavers will have a nice, slick-looking graphic informational handout to be able to give and distribute. And then we started working on the process for, just how are we as a group going to collect, assess, and disseminate the information on these different beaver management techniques. And so we've come up with a working model, and we're testing it out on a few different projects. There's a project where experimentally looking to put a fence through a beaver dam that would help in areas where there's endangered fish movement, where they're concerned about not wanting fish to go through a pipe. And so we're gathering information and sharing ideas with that. The recently promoted back saving device that Fish and Wildlife and our friends, the Occidental Arts and Center are working on and promoting, and also a prototype of a juvenile fish passage. So we're going to try our process on those, and then ultimately, once we come up with our recommendations, we want to try to communicate those, and one way will be through the Beaver Institute website, where we have a dedicated page for the Beaver Management Working Group, as well as the other working groups, as was mentioned earlier, and also encouraging other organizations to help post and share this information. We want to utilize social media, certainly the Beaver Management Forum on Facebook that we administer has over 3,000 people. We'll be looking for ideas, as well as sharing our recommendations through those channels. And we want to work with a communication working group to come up with other ways to help bring in ideas for us to review, as well as putting outreach for our recommendations. So, that like all this, it's a work in progress, but we're really excited about both fulfilling this important need and progress we've made so far. And if you or someone you know is interested in helping, then certainly you can email me or Bonnie. Jacob, I don't have your email there, but at any rate, just contact us and we'll certainly get you in. And with that, I think I'll turn over to Jacob and see if he has anything he'd like to add. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely email Mike or Bonnie, because I'm terrible with email. Yeah, that's great. I would just add to what Mike said, that we are trying to be in the spirit of a working group, a group that does a lot of work. And so I think our last meeting was a testament to that. We spent an hour diving into how to best protect trees, and everyone on the call had protect trees in different ways. And we started getting into fences and slopes, and use posts or don't use posts, and what about this instance or that instance. And I think that's when having a group of people who all have come at this at different landscapes, different ecologies, different folks that they've worked with is really powerful. So I think as a cohort, we're going to be able to, many folks in this cohort supported the development of the flow device best management practices. And I think we're going to pivot to creating a best management practices for tree protection and crop protection. And then like Mike's mentioned, having these little supporting one-pagers for landowners as well. So if you want to get nerdy about all of the technical aspects around tricking beavers and that kind of interplay between human habitat and people and beaver habitat, that's what we're doing in this group.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Mike. I'm going to hand it over, last but not least, to the Science and Research Working Group, Brian Clark.
Great, thank you very much, Adam. I'm going to try and share mine. There we go. Okay, is that coming up for everyone?
Yes, you're all set.
Okay. Oh, great. So my name is Brian Clark. I am one of the co-chairs of the Science and Research Working Group. We're pretty good size and committed group of people, and it fluctuates from time to time depending on our topics. But the broad goals of our group is it's just a function broadly to support to be a support system and a resource for both scientists, researchers, practitioners in the field, or anyone really who's interested in beaver-related science. And so we kind of in our first rounds of the working group came up with some 6 primary topics that we would focus on and break down subdivisions. And so we've been looking at relocation and population studies, beaver biology, ecology, and function, biodiversity and climate change, restoration, management, and conservation methods and impacts, as well as the human and social science dimensions of beavers and beaver science, as well as focusing on ways to promote new science and research, both locally, very regionally specific, or broadly on a more national level. Ooh, sorry, won't let me advance. There we go. So our kind of more specific goals and objectives for this group in the longer run are we really want to develop kind of a resource center or a database of existing beaver related research out there that can be searchable by topic, by region, keywords. And our hope is to have this be kind of a living database that will continue to grow, where we can add information to it or remove information if something is outdated, and just be a kind of a first stop for people who are interested in doing research on a certain topic. It's obviously not going to have everything in it, but our group will work with others in the broader National Beaver Working Group to identify kind of the most important, pertinent, interesting, or new and novel research out there, and try and put it up there so it's a resource for anyone who's looking. The second goal that we're trying to do is really promote new beaver research. And to do this, we're hoping to kind of develop and build a platform that's with the aim of connecting researchers with practitioners or anyone who's interested in internships or jobs. And that way we can kind of share ideas, grow new research opportunities, and potentially kind of reduce some of the costs that are associated with this. And so the idea would be, as if a practitioner is going to be putting in a bunch of flow devices and a researcher is looking for some research opportunities, we can connect those two people together, and they can kind of share those resources and both benefit from the work being done. And then so one of our broader long-term goals is going to be to kind of slowly put together a peer-reviewed journal article that we can kind of summarize the research that's been done, but really the focus of the paper will be to identify kind of the unanswered questions or knowledge gaps and future research needs in beaver-related science. And so that's really what we're hoping to put out there. And the hope with that is, we could really outline, hey, here's some big questions we don't know. And so when funders are looking for maybe what they would like to fund, or what are some good ideas, or researchers are trying to come up with new questions, we can already kind of put that out there as a template. We're a broad group with very diverse interests, so we're not going to be trying to tackle all of them, but just put it out there so it's a resource for people who, are looking for questions or going to be doing research, and it's going to be just a guiding document for future research down the road. So, with that said, our general approach is we meet, the second Thursday of every month with all of our kind of 6 topics. The way we try and work it is, we give each topic 2 months. So the first month we have speakers and presenters come in and give a half an hour presentation on research they've done, followed by, in-depth questions, a question and answer session, which really promotes some good discussions. And then the following month we get together and it's really a working session where we start to dig into, what's the kind of research that's out there that's already been done? What are the data gaps? What questions are still remaining? And we slowly start to fill that in for each one of those topics. And with the hope that, at the end of going through all of this, we'll be able to start putting together this peer-reviewed journal. So with that, we are looking for new members. We definitely, everyone is welcome. We encourage people to stop in for either just 1 month for a topic you're interested in, or to hopefully to be a contributing member to all the topics. So we always welcome, people with expertise, and it can be scientists, practitioners, or anyone who's just interested in that. We could also use some folks with technical expertise in terms of developing a kind of a searchable database or ideas for building kind of this platform for connecting these different communities. I'm probably going a little over on time, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, everyone's welcome, and it's been a really fun and interactive group. So I encourage people to stop by at least.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you all for sharing what's been happening in your working group and what you're looking for as we build out, we're going to be going into our 2nd year of this. So it's been, thinking of it sort of in its beta mode. And now we're ready to sort of open up and bring more people in and bring you in. And we'd love to open it up now for any questions or thoughts or responses with all the brilliant people we have here presenting. I know we'd love to get a conversation going around beavers and what a national working group looks like or can look like, and a national movement for beavers and beaver believers. Yes, folks, you have your hands raised, but if you could just put it either in the Q&A or in the message box so that we can respond there. Although, let me see here if I can allow folks to talk. I think that's an option. So one moment, let me see here.
And in the meantime, if any of you co-chairs have any questions for each other, please feel free to ask each other questions as well, because I know sometimes you guys don't talk in detail about what you're all doing. So
yep,
feel free to chime in.
Yes, we have the co-chairs that meet quarterly. So this is a lovely moment to have everyone on the screen together. And I see Jackie had her hand raised, and you now have the ability to talk. So Jackie.
Can you hear me? Okay,
yes.
Great. This is a question for Rachel. I see that the funding and the research around what funding is available is one of the really big needs right now. And I would love to see a future webinar from your group of putting that together and really walking people through all of those different resources that you talked about. That sounded really great, all the resources, but I think it would be super helpful to have a 1-hour webinar on walking people through that. And is Alex Funk on your group? Is he in your group? Because with Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, he is such an expert on funding in general for nature-based solutions. And so it might be somebody you could reach out and tag team with on a webinar.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm making a note, and I'll definitely follow up on that idea. And we have had at our committee meetings, we have had meetings where we have looked at different successful grant applications, for example. So I'm certain we could, I don't know if we would do it as a standalone webinar versus inviting people to a committee meeting where we could go over the different resources. But yes, we could definitely schedule something like that. I'm sure Adam and Bonnie are making a note as we speak.
Right.
And I was also going to say, we did have a past presentation that was very similar. Brian Hummel, who is right now chiming in, but Brian Hummel actually did a very similar presentation for us in the past. So if anybody's interested, we did record that. And so we can send you a link to that as well that you can watch on your own free time.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jackie. Really quickly, there is a note here that we haven't heard from the Beaver Corps director. So I would just like to take this moment to let Lauren just give a brief overview of Beaver Corps and just to also say hello.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Taylor. I'm the Beaver Corps Program Director. The reason why you haven't heard from me today is because we're focusing on the North American working groups, and we do not have a standing working group for Beaver Corps. However, I am happy to invite anyone who's interested in joining Beaver Corps to join the program. We also have a very active group of members, and we do meet once a month, every month. If you have any interest in putting out some coexistence devices or learning about Beaver coexistence in general, or even low-tech process-based restoration techniques, I encourage you to check out our program and join the team.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. We have a question here from Matt. Any studies, stories regarding livestock grazing management and beaver restoration projects?
I could take that one.
Jackie, all right.
Yeah, there are lots of fantastic stories. Actually, when I was doing my research last year to draft a white paper on what is the state of the science of low-tech process-based restoration / beaver related restoration, I came across incredible research done in particular by Susan Charney, who is at the Pacific Northwest USDA research station. And if you Google her name, I'll put in a link again to my paper, because there's a whole section on the benefits to agricultural producers. That was what she was focused on. She's a social scientist, and she wanted to understand what would it take to basically get more acceptance in the agricultural community to see the benefits. And what it took was the having the expertise and the help, financial help for coexistence measures. Those were really key to the ranchers. Like, they would allow the beaver to come back, but then they didn't want to be left alone and to have to deal with the plugged culverts and the flooding fields. They wanted assistance for that. And when they did have assistance, they said, hey, the benefits far outweigh the negatives, and we're going to allow beaver to stay. So that's what the research is about. I will find again, the link to my paper and put that in there for everybody, because there's a chapter on the benefits to ag.
Amazing. Thank you, Jackie. Any other questions or thoughts about the working groups that anyone would like to ask or engage with? As I mentioned, if you're interested in joining any of these groups, reach out to me, Adam@beaverinstitute.org, or Bonnie at beaverinstitute.org, and we're happy to bring you on board and to onboard you into this working group. I mentioned before that these working groups were born out of BeaverCon and the idea of extending that community, knowledge sharing, inspiration. There is a Beaver conference coming up this fall, State of the Beaver, in Oregon. So be sure to go check that out. I know we can put a link into it, and also a little insider update for folks here. We are already planning BeaverCon 2024. Have started planning it in earnest this spring. And just to let folks know, we will be on the road. BeaverCon is hitting the road, and in 2024 we're going to be holding it in the fall on the Front Range in Colorado. So we are coming out west, and we really want this conference to be a place-based representation of issues that are affecting Colorado, but also the greater West and Southwest. So if you're interested in connecting over that with me, I keep saying that I want to talk to anyone who's even thought of a beaver in Colorado. So please make that connection and be a part of it. We get these conferences are successful because we have so many people volunteering and making it possible. So there's a place for you there as well. There's so many opportunities to help our efforts with Beaver Institute. So really go to our website, and whatever your skill set is, wherever you're coming from, whatever your ability is, whatever you can give, there's a place for you in this movement with Beaver Institute. Great. I think that we don't have any other questions that I'm seeing pop up. Tony asks Brian, is a part of the resources for the science and research, is any of that available online?
It's not at the moment, but we absolutely want it to be available online. Yeah, so we're still going through those topics and still compiling, what kind of research will be available and what will be in that database. But we absolutely want it to be online and easily searchable and accessible to everyone.
Awesome. And Rachel just brought up that there's going to be a virtual conference or summit, the Midwest Beaver Summit. This will be an amazing opportunity to connect and learn so much. Rachel and the Illinois Beaver Alliance, along with Hannah Malachy at the Superior Bioconservancy, have really put this together, and the lineup is amazing. So kudos to Rachel and Hannah for stewarding this and moving it forward. There was a question here, I think, in California, where fire is a huge topic and funding source. Are there any examples of collaboration in this field? And I know there's a lot happening out in California right now, especially with the new adoption with Fish and Wildlife, and the fact that I believe it is Fish and Wildlife. If not, please correct me. There's so many acronyms that run around in my head these days that are really going to be able to put funds towards beaver coexistence and bringing back beavers and making an environment that is sustainable and resilient with beavers. So California is really setting up the model for the rest of us in this. And I think that there are going to be many opportunities related to funding and support that come out of this model. So please do stay tuned on that. And see here. What is the date for the virtual Midwest Beaver Summit? It is, I believe, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel, so I am correct on that.
It's 2 back-to-back Wednesdays, the 13th and the 17th. The 13th and the 20th from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. I shared the link in the chat.
Yeah, if you go through the chat, there's some amazing links to a lot of resources and opportunities. So be sure to check out that chat. And otherwise, does anyone have any closing thoughts from the working groups? Any of the chairs have any closing thoughts they'd like to share?
One thing I'll share in reference to Charles Preston's question about California, that if he hasn't already, reaching out to the Occidental Arts folks. They've been doing a lot of work, and we actually are meeting with them this week about collaboration. But they're a great resource and have been leading the charge in California to get the funding and the legislation for beavers. So that's a group that I would definitely check out since you're in that state.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you everyone for taking this time on a Monday to be here, and for the co-chairs for their work. These are all volunteers. They are giving up their time, their energy, their smarts to really make this movement happen and to move these issues forward. So we are just so grateful. Beaver Institute is so grateful to all of you. And we're really excited to keep moving this forward and also to include some attendees into this movement as well. So we will all be in touch. I'll be in touch with everyone with a follow-up email shortly with next steps. And with much gratitude, thank you, and we will see you soon. One thing to note, I did put the registration in there. Beavers in the City is our next Beavers Uncovered webinar. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think, and very exciting. So be sure to register for that and be on our e-blast. If not, go to our website. It's new, it's wonderful, all kinds of resources. So that's it. All right. Have a wonderful Monday, and Beaver on.